Have you ever considered your own podcast? Shaina Weisinger of Podcast Memes is here to share with you some tips on how to get started.
Hi, I'm Emily LaRouche. Are you ready to make the journey from lawyer to entrepreneur? Every week I'm sitting down with people who have mastered the art of running a business and want to share with you the lessons they've learned along the way. Join me as we experience the highs, the lows, and everything in between as we learn, share, and grow together. Welcome to Share the Love.
Shaina Weisinger is founder of Podcast Memes. She has a background in video production, and she's an expert when it comes to podcasting. Shaina, what is one reason that every business should have a podcast?
Oh man, well, there's a lot of reasons. But one of my biggest ones is that podcast listeners are really sticky and devoted. So, I mean, as a video producer, I originally just did video for digital marketing. And it's like when you make a video to go on Facebook or whatever, if you get like 10 seconds of engagement, that's like really exciting, right? With a podcast, the stats are incredible. It's like 80% of people listen to the majority of a podcast. And when they're 15 minutes to an hour long, like imagining somebody who is interested in the stuff you want to talk about, engaging with you and your brand for 15 minutes to an hour. The majority of the people who are listening to it. And to me, that's just to be able to have an audience that's actually that sticky is pretty, because they're not just like listening to you, but they're inviting you like into their ears, like into their home. They're working out with you. They're driving in their car with you. And I just think that there's something so powerful about being able to connect with your potential audience in that kind of way.
Wow, and you're doing it like in their most intimate moments. Yeah. Like for me, it's when I'm walking the dog is when I will do my podcast listening. And it's just, that's like my special time to be out there in nature with the dog. And I'm inviting you, podcast producer, into my ears. So yeah, it is really intimate.
Yeah, it is. And I think that people don't realize that. I mean, when you're producing a podcast, a lot of the times it's audio and just you hanging out at a desk with a mic. And you don't realize that like on the other end of that, what's actually going on with the people who are listening. It's just, it's bigger than people really think that it is, which I think is kind of cool.
What are one of the barriers for people who are like, yeah, I'm going to do a podcast. This sounds great. But then what happens? You know, what happens between the idea and the actual rollout?
And then making it happen. I think that people get overwhelmed on the consistency of it, first of all. And so one thing that I always suggest is to front load as much as you can. Like if somebody says, oh, I'm going to do a weekly podcast, like set a time to actually get on and podcast weekly, either like live or setting it up and making sure you're doing it that week and producing it and the whole deal. I just think that it's unrealistic to think that you're going to stay on it because life happens, you know? Right. I mean, the greats like John Lee Dumas, he's not doing his daily anymore. Well, he's doing like a small mini daily podcast now, but he did daily episodes, like for 2,000 episodes. Wow. And he front loads them. So he does 15 on one day and 15 the day after, and then he's got all of his content for the month.
Wow.
So I think that it becomes overwhelming when you first get started because it sounds easy.
Right.
But then making sure that like your equipment is good, making sure that everything sounds good, you got your intros, the uploading, all that stuff, it can be a lot.
So step one, front load.
Front load.
Pack it in as much as you can. And that's what we try and do here.
Yeah. We're the second interview today.
Yes. We'll try and pack in as many as we can into one day.
Yeah.
And what's the next thing?
I think that marketing really is a struggle for a lot of people who are podcasting. Just throwing it up there and hoping people listen is great. And sometimes that works if you have great content. But it doesn't happen immediately. And I think that discourages people too. Is like on the first like 2 episodes, you're like, I don't have 1 million downloads. Yeah. Like nobody cares. Well, if nobody cares yet, it's just it is what it is, you know. But I think that sticking with it is really something that people struggle with. They feel like they're putting in all this work and energy, and they are. But making sure you can market it will really help too, and that's where.
So number 2 is consistency, marketing.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Tell me more about what Podcast Memes does.
So Podcast Memes, it's interesting because my background originally was video production and digital marketing. And then I dove into the video podcast space with a friend of mine, Mike Arce, and we saw how amazingly his podcast did that I helped him produce. So we dove into the podcasting space just because it had so many amazing benefits, and I saw somebody explode just from that. Well, I mean, other elements too, but the podcast really helped. And having a chance to be around a lot of podcasters that were doing really well, and then taking my marketing background and being like, well, you should have all of these elements when you're putting your podcast on Facebook, you know, like in little things, like when you go to put, like you see those video memes, right, where it's got the text on top, text on bottom, it's like a minute of footage or whatever. If you go to use that as an ad on Facebook, it's going to get rejected.
Yeah.
because there's too much text on it. So you have to create like another thumbnail that will then sit there in its place so that it will still play the right way, but Facebook reads it differently, right? So it's all these tiny little tips and tricks and creating all this stuff that a lot of podcasters don't know how to do, or they know they should do it,
Right.
or they do know how to do it, they just don't want to do it. So I started the company because every podcaster I was talking to, I was telling them about video podcasting and then also how we create these small elements out of it. And they were like, the video podcasting thing's great, but if you do that other stuff, I'm all about it. And if people ask, listen and do it. So now we just create packages that have, you know, the 2 audiograms. So it can just be an audio podcast. It can be, and we'll do like the little waveforms. We'll put it in a little iPhone and put the picture of you or your guest or whatever. If you get a couple of those, you get images. So like, we'll probably throw one up on the screen here, but it's of you. It's gorgeous. You and your buddies like this. But a really cool quote that somebody said in your interview. You do the text and then also the thumbnails that make it all work and magical. And it's just a package that it's a plug and play, and that's it.
So all you have to do is show up, shoot the podcast, get everything over to you. You'll create the thumbnail and the images for what we're actually going to upload, and it's all customized to meet the approval of Facebook and all the other social media channels.
Yeah, and it's every episode. So every episode you get like 7 pieces of content. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's super cool. I'm super excited about it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What other tips can you give for someone who's just starting out, maybe doing, let's talk about a video podcast, some tips on making that look right?
Yeah, so video podcasting, I love it. I just love the whole like being able to engage person to person, right? And there's something to be said for, I think, people actually spending physical time with each other. And actually, he just said it in the interview beforehand. So if you didn't listen to the podcast before, you go listen to that one because it was really, really good. As far as gear goes and making sure it looks professional, lighting is huge. Lighting and audio in podcasts, well, lighting and audio in general in video are huge, but making sure your audio sounds good because it's going to be an audio piece by itself as well. So just making sure it's lit. You can get all this stuff on like Amazon for super cheap to do it yourself. It really isn't that difficult. And then also one nice trick is to be able to have multiple camera angles because, for instance, and you know this because you've been doing this for a while, if you're trying to read a question while the other person is answering, you don't want to look like a jerk while you're like, if the camera's on both of you and you're like not paying attention, right? So it gives the chance for the camera just to be on that person so that you can't tell that the interviewee is, you know, checking their stuff. And also the other nice thing is it gives you a chance to be able to edit down. So like if you need to cut out a chunk of something or you messed up or whatever, it's not just going to be this weird cut in footage. It'll be, you can just switch camera angles and it looks like nothing ever happened. That it was just one big fluid, beautiful interview.
Do you have an educational piece that you offer?
I do. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, actually, we do an entire digital platform that teaches you how to do video podcasting that looks just like this. So it's called videopodcastproducers.com. We have a free 7-day training course that'll give you just the basics, but if you want to light it on fire and make it freaking fantastic, then there's the whole digital platform that'll teach you how to market it, how to be a good host. I mean, everything A to Z on how to make it awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have done this without you.
Really?
No,
I'm so
there's
glad.
no
I'm
way.
so glad you did. She was, so Emily is our first client, and I couldn't have asked for a more amazing beta. She came in and was like, I'm so nervous, and then she was like the greatest host ever. So, and she does everything we ask her to with her marketing, which is so nice. So, no, but thank you. I'm glad you've been such an awesome host and like client to do video podcasts with. It's been so much fun. I've gotten a chance to learn a lot through her experiences. So
It's been wonderful. The one thing that my own tip that I would give is if you're doing an audio podcast and you've got your person, a lot of times they'll come in and you guys maybe, I don't know if you're at a kitchen table or in a studio or an office, but together, the listener can't see you. And so when you guys are fist bumping and then you're describing your fist bump, it's not as cool to us. So when you're laughing about something in the room, not as cool to the listener. So that's just something I would be cognizant of, is to make sure that you're not talking about like an item in front of you necessarily, because it kind of gets weird. It's like you two are having a moment that I don't get.
Yeah, like this. Here, let's just look at each other for a second.
Yeah, did you feel that
Did
impact?
you get that awkward?
Like audibly, did you get that? Yeah.
Like, hey everybody, look at this. Now people who are listening have no idea that I'm hugging.
And then they'll start describing what I'm looking at right now is blah, blah, and it really just loses the
weird.
magic.
Yeah,
it does.
exactly. So yeah, when you're filming a video podcast, keep
Don't
that in
get
mind
weird.
too, because the people listening are going to be like, I have no idea. I don't
Right,
understand.
yeah. I try and remember that because we
Yeah.
do audio as well. So I'm trying to see, if we're talking about a prop or, oh my God, the AC just went on, it got loud in here. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Just don't get weird.
Yeah. So I tell people, like, when you go to do a podcast, especially if you're doing video on top of it, just think audio first, because everything will still play into video, but video won't always play into audio.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
make that your baseline.
Yep. Any other last tips?
No, I think that as a host, go and get Larry King's book. It's How to Talk to Anybody, Anywhere, Anytime, something like that. I don't know, we'll put it on the bottom. But it's a great book because one of the things that I learned and I've been in front of the camera for a long time, like I took acting classes and stuff like that, but one thing that he really reminded me of was just to like be honest, be yourself, not to be so forceful with like, I have 4 questions that I must ask, like just go with the flow. And I really loved a part in here where he's like, if you're nervous, say you're nervous. Like,
Right.
because then people get to go on that journey with you and they're more invested in you as a person as opposed to you having to pretend that you're this seasoned pro when you're not, just be yourself.
That's a great book. And another one I just got is Talk Like TED.
Oh.
And they take all of the elements of the best TED speakers and why their videos perform so well. There were common elements. And so it talks about some of those. So we'll hopefully put a pop-up of that in so you can
I'll
see
have to read that.
Talk
That
Like
sounds
TED
awesome.
and then the Larry King, How to Talk to Anyone, I think Anywhere.
Anywhere, anytime. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
great books if you want to do any kind of public speaking. And
Yeah.
now I am going to do my rapid fire
Yeah, let's
questions
hear
with
it.
you.
I should know what these are, but I don't.
Okay.
Let's hear them.
Favorite place you've ever traveled?
Oh, this is going to be so
Don't
like,
you
cliche.
dare cliche your
I'm
wedding.
gonna cliche my wedding. But it wasn't because it was my wedding. So we got married, and this is so funny. It's spelled Pacentro, Pacentro. It's a tiny little town in Italy that my grandparents grew up in. It's a little hillside town in Abruzzo, and it's so funny because like I can say it like my grandparents say it or like how they say it, but I always feel so weird when I like throw the real accent in it. Like
Do it.
I know
Just
how
do it.
they used to call it Pagent. It's a Pagent. That I'm like, I would rather say it like a super white hillbilly because I feel awkward. I don't know which is worse. But anyway, we went to Pacentro, and it's this tiny it was very Game of Thronesy. It was incredible, but to go and see like the places where my grandparents grew up and met and fell in love. It's a tiny, tiny little place, and it was just gorgeous. Just gorgeous. I can't wait to go back.
Nice.
And the wedding was all right, I guess.
I guess.
I mean, but yeah, it was really cool.
Awesome. What is the last song that you belted out as if no one was watching?
I do that a lot in the car. So there's a running playlist. It was probably something horribly covered by myself that was Christina Aguilera's original. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What makes you the happiest?
laughing like a total moron.
You do laugh a lot. I would ask when the last time you belly laughed, but I'm going to say it was probably like 10 seconds ago.
Probably just then. Yeah. I trip a lot,
Awesome.
so that usually helps.
If you want to laugh with Shaina, contact her. How can we find you?
So I am on all the happy channels as Shaina Weisinger, Instagram, Facebook, and all that fun stuff. But yeah,
Podcastmemes.com.
podcastmemes.com or videopodcastproducers.com if you want to create your own ordeal.
The most fabulous producer. Thank you, Shaina.
Thank you. And people who are listening won't know what just happened.
I know. She flipped her hair,
Flipped my
people.
hair. Fabulously.
And it was elegant.
That's great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
I'm super psyched to be on here. So.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Share the Love. Make sure to give us a thumbs up, share, and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and Google Play to get the latest content.